Welcome to the office. It's Lagos Talks 91.3 FM. My name is Michelle Ago. It is now 31 minutes past the hour of 4, and on the office today, we will be discussing something very interesting, as we always do every Thursday from 4:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. Now, I'm going to introduce my guest shortly, but I'd love to remind you that the office, this show is probably brought to you by the Chartered Institute of Personnel Management of Nigeria and Lagos Talks 91.3. Now, to join the conversation, you can tweet at Lagos Talks 913 on Twitter and use the hashtag TheOffice913, or you can call the phone lines 0809 1913 913, 0809 222 0913, or 0809 234 5913, or call the landline numbers on 015150913, or send us a message on the WhatsApp platform. Now, my guest today is a passionate and purpose-driven speaker, writer, and trusted advisor in the field of human resource management. Now, she's the founder of Kendor Consulting, which is a human resource management consulting firm specializing in learning and organizational development solutions. She's also the author of the self-help book, Change Your Career. She's excited by initiatives that ultimately develop people and organizations. Now, she's a certified global professional in human resources, that's the GPHR, career and executive coach, developing HR professionals and business leaders to deliver on their strategic plans. A lifelong career and a very lifelong learner at the same time, currently enrolled in a doctorate program researching on enhancing engagement in remote work. Very impressive. Talk about keeping up with the trends. The outcome of her research will proffer solutions that improves the performance of remote workers. Her other academic qualifications include a master's degree in information technology from Cranfield University, United Kingdom, a diploma in occupational psychology from Middlesex University, UK, and a bachelor's degree in economics from Reading University, UK. She is she sees work as an expression of one's purpose in life and is grateful for the opportunity to live on that purpose. I will mention some of her noteworthy achievements, but if I start, I don't think we would leave here today. But I'll mention a few, maybe two. She's been recognized and awarded by local and international HR bodies for contributing to the development of HR community and the HR professional. She led the delivery of several HR transformation, organizational development, and change management projects, including a World Bank-funded state government project and a staff audit of 6 government agencies in significant cost reduction. She's been the founder and host of the annual HR Bootcamp Conference, a platform she established to explore new paradigms for reinventing people management practices. She's engaged as a trusted advisor to several leadership teams and boards, bringing fresh perspectives and insights that accelerates the support and delivery of strategic objectives. I'll stop here because, like I said, it goes on and on, just to show you how honored we are to have her join us today on this very special show today. Welcome again. My guest today is Adora Ikwuemesi, MCIPM, founder and director of Kendor Consulting. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you. A pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure that you're joining us today. Today we'll be talking about recruitment practices and what we should know. This is the perfect show for us to talk about with you, because you have been strategizing, you have been innovative, you proffer solutions, and you're currently doing your doctorate in remote working and research on remote working. It just shows how passionate you are about change, how passionate you are about evolving, not just yourself, but also evolving with the times with this particular research topic that you're studying. So I believe you're the best person to learn from as to how recruitment works and what we should know as job seekers, especially for my listeners out there. So I'll ask, some questions, but I'd love to open up the phone lines later to hear from our people. So please educate us on what recruitment practices mean.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, recruitment is something that all of us, anyone who works, is familiar with, because you've either gone through the process or you've been part of it. You can be at both ends. Either you're trying to get hired or you've been hired. So recruitment technically is a process or an activity that involves the attraction of qualified candidates for a job, basically. So in the simplest terms, it's about attracting qualified candidates for a position, but not just it doesn't end at just attracting them. It also involves the fact that they have to be qualified, and that the fact that they have to be hired on a timely basis and in the right numbers. So obviously, if you're recruiting several people, maybe you need to recruit 50 sales agents, then the numbers, the fact that you recruit 50 is key as well. And the fact that you recruit them on time is key. So that whole process, all the activities involved in attracting the qualified candidates for a role is what we generally describe as recruiting.
Right. Now, what are some of the specific activities
in simple terms?
Okay. What are some of the specific activities that
Good.
form the recruitment practices in an organization?
Fantastic. So the way I defined it was it's a process. So first of all, it's an activity. And now you've asked, what are the activities? So it's the whole aim of the activities is to fill roles in an organization. So some of the activities involved, if you're obviously trying to attract qualified candidates, then some of the activities involved will be the activities you carry out to attract. So promoting, advertising a role, or searching. Sometimes you're actively searching and sometimes you're advertising, right? And sometimes you are, and obviously after you finish, once you've completed the process of advertising or searching, because sometimes some roles you have to actually look for candidates because they are passive. And then sometimes you advertise because maybe the candidates are out there and you're trying to reach them. So promoting, searching, then shortlisting. Once you have a pool of candidates, maybe you've received enough applications, or maybe you have found, suitable applicants, then the process of shortlisting, technically we call that selection, but in recruitment, I guess we can still, so you have to select qualified candidates based on their qualifications. Before you started the recruitment process, you should have a profile that you're looking out for. So the process of shortlisting will be you're shortlisting the candidates against the profile of the role. So you want a certain particular, type of person, like with experience, let's say maybe 4 years in oil and gas, for example. Let's say you're looking for a director in an oil and gas firm. So maybe you have outlined the profile. So you'd be looking for a particular person. So the process of selecting, shortlisting, the right qualified candidates is also part of the recruitment process. And then obviously selecting based on their qualifications is just one aspect. Once you selected suitable or qualified candidates, then you'd want to interview them, or you'd have another process of assessing those candidates. So the process of assessing your candidates, so you shortlist and then you have an assessment process. So you could choose different assessment methods. You might want to carry out aptitude tests, depending on what you're trying to assess. You may want to interview people. You may want to carry out personality testing. You may want to carry out presentations. So you'd have assessment. So I would say, if I look through the process, I would say maybe start with obviously having the right job profile. When you have the right job profile, then you might advertise the role or search for the candidates that suit the role. After that, you want to shortlist. After shortlisting, you want to assess the candidates that you shortlisted. There are different assessment methods. After assessing them, you want to identify the most suitable and come up with a selection of suitable, like your final candidates, and then you want to make a decision. Maybe before then, depending on your organization, you might want to check out, do some like background checking beforehand, before you finally select and place a candidate. But, in layman's term, we would refer to this entire process as recruitment, but technically as HR people, we would distinguish it a bit and say that recruitment was more about the initial part of the process. But I believe for this, for the process of, based on this particular conversation, at least to enlighten people about recruitment, that is generally what recruitment is about. Selecting ultimately you want to select qualified people to fill roles in organizations, because the organizations have the mandate, the roles are there. Ultimately, recruitment is to ensure that you can fill those vacancies so that the firm can carry out its business effectively.
All right, thank you. Are there bad recruitment practices that impact businesses negatively?
I would say yes, obviously. I mean, okay, so let's look at the ultimate objective of recruitment. Why is a firm wanting to recruit in the first place? And why do all firms recruit? Because you have roles. Okay. Why do you have job roles in your organization? Because your organization has a mandate, it has a mission, it has a vision, it has objectives, and you need people. And well, maybe now you need robots and AI, but you need people, you need people to do those jobs. So you have to recruit. A bad practice, I would say, or a negative outcome in recruitment is selecting the wrong candidates. Another negative outcome in recruitment is also rejecting the right candidates. A lot of people don't look at that angle, but a poor recruitment process rejects qualified candidates, as well as, hires unqualified candidates.
Yeah.
Practices like, what practices can cause that to happen? First of all, I would talk about two sides. One is the technical knowledge of that a knowledgeable practitioner should have. If you don't, for example, use the right assessment methods, you can be looking out for the wrong things, and then you'd hire the wrong person, for example. So the practitioner or the assessors or the recruiters or the hiring manager play a part. So if you have untrained people, or like untrained practitioners, whether they're hiring managers or HR professionals, then they don't know how to carry out the process of recruitment effectively, then that's a problem in itself. Poor practices also can do with like I said, the methods. Maybe you have discriminatory methods that, have bias. You have bias against certain types of people. So when you're recruiting, you don't hire the best candidate, your biases get in the way. Or you have discriminatory practices where you discriminate against certain classes of people, so you don't always get the best candidate because you said, you know what, I don't want these old people, or I don't want this two young people, or I don't want this female, or I don't want this male, or I don't want this religion. So there are those, I would say, are poor practices because they do not allow you focus on getting the most qualified candidates. So I would say, if I would say in a nutshell, like there would be two facets of poor practices. One would be the practitioner or the person hiring, their level of competence. And another would be, the actual practice itself, the processes. If you don't use the right recruitment methods, maybe first of all, you don't even develop the right profile. So you're looking for the wrong person. Secondly, you might have the right profile, but your biases or there's so much discrimination there, and you're not even looking out for the best candidates. So those kind of practices can affect the outcome. And like I said, there are two negative outcomes: rejecting the right candidates and recruiting the wrong candidate. Those are both poor outcomes, because recruitment, we want to hire qualified candidates or the right candidates ultimately.
Right. Now, how can how can they develop and sustain recruitment practices that positively impact employer branding? Focusing on the employer branding now. What can they do positively?
Remember that, yeah, of course. Remember when I started at the beginning, I said that recruitment was the process of attracting, right? And you see, this is crucial for recruitment, because what also makes recruitment difficult for organizations or ineffective are their inability to attract. And when I say your ability to attract, it means that the organization needs to be attractive to the kind of people they want to hire. Not, so note, be attractive to the kind of candidates you want. Because I know, like, for example, maybe in countries like Nigeria, it was like high unemployment. However, recruitment is not about hiring anyone. It's about hiring the right candidates, right? So first of all, you have to work on your employer brand. And one thing that is key to your employer brand is what we call, it's a bit of an HR technicality, your employee value proposition. What do you have to offer? HR will have to work hand in hand with other parts of the organization, like marketing, to be attractive. What do you have to offer? What is your organization known for? What do you have, for the people who you want to attract? Because it's like both parties must want to. I describe recruitment like a marriage or
the
like
attraction. The attraction must be mutual.
Yeah. It's not enough to say, oh, you know what, I want to hire this kind of people. But the people that you want to hire, do they want to work for you? So you have to, you have to have your offerings as well. So firms have to sit down and establish their value proposition. And they need to, like, it's like almost like saying, oh, I want to get married or I want a relationship. What kind of guy do I want? But apart from what kind of man do I want to marry, or what kind of woman do I want to marry? What about you? What kind of, what kind of person are you? Right? Not just focusing on the kind of guy you want to marry. What kind of person are you? So that's what firms have to do. They have to be very clear on their value proposition. What value can they give? How attractive are they? What are those things? Maybe benefits, maybe compensation, maybe work environment, maybe a place where people can be expressive, maybe an inclusive work environment. So they need to establish those parameters or establish those elements. And they might need to work with their marketing, or because they need to promote themselves in one way. Otherwise, what happens is that when they're trying to attract, then they're not attractive. And then they're wondering why the kind of they don't want to work for them. So remember that when you're recruiting talents, and talent is not an all-comers affairs, we regard like top, of course, top candidates are regarded as talent. They have choice. They don't want to work for anyone. So you have to be attractive. So for sustainability, firms need to be strategic. You need to think long-term about your recruitment. Like, you need to think it's a proactive stance. It's not a reactive, like, oh, I'm looking for people all the time. You need to think long-term. You need to be more strategic about it. You need to think, you know what, where am I going to get the kind of people I want? And how do I become the employer that the kind of people I want to work for? So it's something that you would have to be proactively, like done. It's something that has to be proactive.
You have to be intentional about it.
Like established, yes. You have to be intentional. You have to be deliberate about it, because it's something that you have to work at, and not assume that you're going to have people waiting at the office entrance, pouring. You may have people, but they might not be the kind of people you want. So recruitment is all about being able to attract, the right candidates.
Wow. Yeah. Now let's quickly tap into your current academic endeavor just a little bit. I'm just wondering how have recruitment practices changed or evolved since COVID? Is there anything worthy of note?
Definitely. Yeah, big changes. I mean, who would have ever thought that people would hire people they've never seen? That happened a lot during the COVID period, and it's still happening now. So people are like, people are interviewed remotely and they get the job remotely, and that's it. Like, before, like I said, before the COVID, pandemic, COVID-19 crisis.
Yeah.
I mean, we would never think of like completing a whole recruitment process virtually. So, and I'm not talking about staff that are like, in other countries. I'm talking about staff that are in the same vicinity. People complete remote, recruitment processes in its entirety remotely. Before I got on this, before I got on this call now, I received another call of someone who just got a job, and it was a remote interview over Zoom. And, within about 2 hours, they called her back and they told her she had got the job, and she's not seeing these people, and they're not outside the country, or they're only like a couple of miles away. So that's one benefit. Like, there's more, I would say, people have learned, and organizations have learned to just trust the process. So I may not see you, but if your qualifications, fit the job, you do an online interview and you're able to convince me, then you start work. So those are big shifts. And of course, it doesn't just end with recruitment. So the staff is also onboarded virtually as well. And then they continue to work virtually or in a hybrid manner as well. So if that's a big change, because that would have been unheard of, like, pre the COVID-19 crisis, but now it's commonplace. You hire a lot of people. I hire people I've never seen them. I see them after they started work, and then you can imagine the people that whose work is purely remote, you'll never see them.
Yeah.
So I would say that is definitely a big one that wasn't common practice before.
All right. Now, what about HR professionals? For HR professionals who intend to specialize as recruiters or go into recruitment full-time and the selection experts, what advice do you have for them or any of them? Because sometimes people do not understand that recruitment is a niche or a specialty or a specialized area in HR. They think that, HR, being in the HR space, you can do every and anything. You can do HR management, you can do talents, but it's very, very broad. Now, for those who are listening and might find recruitment to be a very interesting side of HR and want to specialize in this area, what advice would you have for them?
Okay, it's interesting you talk about it because, and I don't want to downplay recruitment because I find recruitment is a very rigorous process and it's a very, very important process because it's make or break. You hire the wrong person, it's very costly. But for people who want to transition into HR, I usually typically advise that recruitment is actually the easiest, I feel, and this is me, the easiest part of HR to get into. In fact, when you start in a recruitment consulting firm or a consultancy firm, they will typically just get you in recruiting. Maybe they'll get you shortlisting CVs or, do something like that. So it is a specialist area. It does have specialist skills. Like, of course, you have to learn different assessment methods. However, like I said, it's an easier entry point. Not that it's easy, but it's easy to transition to. And it's a very lucrative endeavor. It's a lucrative business area if you decide, that you want to go into it. Why? Because firms will forever be recruiting. I don't want to say every firm, but most firms, a lot of firms have vacancies. Now, that people don't have jobs does not mean there are no vacancies. There's a mismatch in the vacancies and the skills of the people that, are unemployed. But do organizations have vacancies? Yes. So anyone who's specializing in recruitment, it's a lucrative field in the sense that it's lucrative, like you will always have clients. It's not a dry, area. I mean, of course, but of course, during recessions, you might find a drop in recruitment, but it is an area that you could get into more easily than other areas that are more technical. Now, not to say, and I don't want to downplay, I'm not saying it's not technical, but it's an easier entry point. Every profession has its easier entry point. I think recruitment is an easier entry point for HR. So yes, if you're thinking of going into HR, try recruitment consulting because there are administrative activities you can start with. The more strategic side would obviously be coming up with recruitment strategy, maybe developing a job profile or a job description that you will use to carry out the recruitment. Those are a bit more technical. Deciding the best assessment method to use for a particular recruitment, that's a bit more technical, but you can learn those things. A good training program on recruiting skills can help you gain those skills quite quickly. And then, you can get into the field if it's something that you want to. So consider it, actually. It's a good one.
It's a good area. All right. You talked about the possibility of a mismatch with, companies or organizations with vacancies and people who are also unemployed. You also talked about the marriage between employers and employees. You see HR, this whole entire recruitment process as a marriage because the better if you do very well at the recruitment process, you get the right candidates. So can you just highlight for those that are listening who are employees and might be wondering how they can become more attractive to recruiters? What would you tell them in return from the outside point of view?
Yes, that's very interesting. That's a very good point because for people who are searching, just think of recruitment like a marriage, or I don't know, I like to use that term, or a relationship. In as much as you want someone, you also have to be attracted to that person. Now, think about the employer. You want to work in a particular firm. There's a job description or a job profile that you've seen advertised of the ideal person. The question you ask yourself is, do I look like this person? Because that's what they want. That's their spec, right? Do you look like their spec? If you don't look like their spec, do what you can to bring yourself to that specification. Because the reason why there's a specification is because that they are communicating their ideal candidates. And if you don't look like the ideal candidates in terms of your qualifications and what they have described, then you're least likely to get the job. So it's actually like, I think in Nigeria, we use the term expo. It's almost like giving you, like, when you see a job specification, they're telling you what they want. And so if you fit that description, then you're more likely to get the job. So they're telling you what areas to actually develop yourself in. So you want to be attractive. And the best candidates, they don't need to look for work. They are looked for, they're searched for. So when you find yourself looking for a job, searching for a job, is usually because you're in a very competitive market. However, people who are highly talented and highly skilled, they usually get sought after. You don't usually, and we call them in recruitment, we call them passive candidates. They're almost like the most attractive ones. They're not even looking, like they're there with their skill, looking all pretty, and then you're like, the recruiters are going after them. How do you get to become that person? You have to have skills that other people don't have. You have to stand out, so that other people want you. So I just say, just picture yourself and ask yourself, how can I be more attractive? How can I be appealing? How can I be sought after? You have to have scarce skills, and you have to have, skills or competencies that other people don't have. And I think it applies to life generally. How do you become sought after in your industry? You can't be like everyone else. So if you want to be looked out for, or if you want to be sought after, you have to stand out. And the best way of standing out is to have skills that other people don't have. If you have common skills, then you're not going to be looked for. But if you have scarce skills and you stand out, like, like you're just, like looking, then of course people are going to look out for you.
All right. Thank you so much. We've learned so much from you today. My guest today is Adora Ikwuemesi, MCIPM, founder and director of Kendor Consulting, a purpose and passionate driven speaker, as we can hear. She's a writer and a trusted advisor in the field of human resource management. Thank you so much for joining us today. We do appreciate you. You have impacted so much knowledge into us for recruiters out there and those in the HR space that are trying to specialize in recruitment. You've given out everything to us. And should we have more questions, we'll always reach out to you to join us again on The Office.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts to share before you go?
I would say that recruitment is a very key part of the HR process. People just have this thought that that's all HR people do. We hire, we fire, but recruitment is much more technical than that. You need to be very smart. In as much as it's technical, you need to have some very good intuition to be able to suss people out and know and differentiate between a good candidate and not so, would I say, no, there's not a bad candidate, but not suitable for a particular role. So yeah, thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening. Now, coming up next is Critical Thinking. Don't go anywhere. Bye.
Bye.
Michelle, how are you?
Hi.
This show was nice.
It was very nice.